Captain Lee Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. His ship was ugly compared to the sleek vessels other alien races built. Where their ships curved and flowed like art pieces, the HFY Defiance looked like a metal brick covered in weapons. But Lee knew something the aliens did not understand. Pretty ships died quickly in real battles. The year was 2387, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for 50 years. In all that time, the other races treated humans like children who had gotten lucky. They gave humanity the worst trade deals, ignored human opinions in meetings, and spoke about humans like they were not in the room. Lee had served in the human fleet for 20 years, and he was tired of being treated as second best. "Captain, we are getting a distress signal," said Lieutenant Kim Jae-wook from his position at the tactical station. Kim was young but smart, and he thought about battles in ways that confused alien military experts. "It is coming from research. Station Alpha 7. Lee turned from the window. "What does the message say?" "The station is under attack, sir. They are asking for immediate help." Kim paused and looked at his screen. "Sir, the attacking ships are hegemony vessels. I count 12 heavy cruisers." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew about the hegemony. They were a military empire that had been conquering independent worlds for the past 10 years. Their ships were powerful, and their crews were experienced warriors. Most council races avoided fighting them directly. 12 hegemony cruisers could destroy entire fleets. Chief Engineer Park Min-seo looked up from her station. She was the smartest person Lee had ever met, and she had rebuilt the Defiance's engines to be faster and stronger than anything in the human fleet. "Captain, each of those cruisers is bigger than us. Their weapons are more advanced, too." Lee nodded. He knew the numbers. Any sane captain would call for backup and wait for a larger fleet. That was what the aliens would do. They would follow proper procedure, hold meetings, and eventually send a force large enough to guarantee victory. But Research Station Alpha 7 would be destroyed by then, and all the people on it would be dead. "How long until we reach the station?" Lee asked. 15 minutes at maximum speed," answered the navigator. "Take us in," Lee ordered. The bridge crew looked at each other. They all knew this was probably suicide. The Defiance was tough, but it was still just one ship against 12. However, none of them questioned the order. They had served with Lee long enough to trust him, even when his plans seemed impossible. As the Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the research station, Lee could see the battle had already begun. The station's shields were failing, and pieces of debris floated in space around it. The 12 hegemony cruisers surrounded the station like wolves around wounded prey. "Sir, they have noticed us," Kim reported. 3 ships are turning toward us." Lee smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Good, Kim, I want you to target their engines, not their weapons. Min-seo, give me everything the engines can handle. We are going to do something these aliens have never seen before." The 3 hegemony cruisers fired first. Their energy beams lit up space as they shot toward the Defiance. But Lee had already given the order to move, and the human ship twisted away from the attack in a way that seemed impossible for something so large. "Now, Kim," Lee said calmly. The Defiance's main guns fired, but instead of energy beams like other races used, they shot solid metal rods accelerated to incredible speed. The physics were simple. A piece of metal moving fast enough could punch through anything. The first cruiser's shields stopped the initial shots, but the metal rods kept coming. 20 shots hit the same spot, and the shields failed. The next 10 shots tore through the ship's hull like it was paper. The hegemony crews had never seen weapons like this. Their shields were designed to stop energy attacks, not physical projectiles moving at the speed of light. The first cruiser exploded and the other 2 tried to retreat. "Do not let them escape," Lee ordered. "Ram the second one." Park Min-seo's eyes went wide. "Sir, ramming will damage our hull. Our hull is designed to take damage. Theirs is not." The Defiance accelerated directly toward the second cruiser. The alien crew tried to turn away, but human ships were built differently. Where alien vessels relied on shields and maneuverability, human ships were designed to survive being hit. The Defiance slammed into the cruiser's side, and both ships shook from the impact. But the human ship kept moving, tearing a hole in the alien vessel that exposed it to space. The third cruiser finally managed to get away, but it was badly damaged and would not be fighting again soon. "Sir, the other 9 ships are moving toward us," Kim reported. "They look angry." Lee laughed. "Good. When your enemy is angry, they make mistakes. All ships. This is Captain Lee. We are going to show these aliens what humans can do." The battle that followed became legendary. The Defiance moved like no ship its size should be able to move, twisting between enemy attacks and striking back with weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Lee used tactics that alien minds could not predict because they came from humanity's violent history on Earth. When the hegemony ships tried to surround the Defiance, Lee ordered the ship to fly directly through their formation, firing in all directions. When they tried to use their superior numbers, he launched hundreds of small drones that confused their targeting systems. When they tried to retreat to a safe distance, he followed them and rammed another ship. One by one, the hegemony cruisers fell. Some were destroyed by the Defiance's unusual weapons. Others were torn apart by ramming attacks. A few tried to surrender, but Lee had seen what the hegemony did to conquered worlds. He showed them the same mercy they had shown their victims. When the battle ended, 11 hegemony cruisers were destroyed. Only one escaped, and it was too damaged to be a threat. The Defiance was scarred and battered, but it was still fighting. "Sir, we are getting messages from all over the galaxy," the communications officer reported. "Everyone wants to know what happened here." Lee looked out at the debris field that had once been a powerful enemy fleet. Research Station Alpha 7 was safe, and its crew was already sending thank you messages. But more importantly, the galaxy had just learned something new about humanity. "Tell them the truth," Lee said. "Tell them that humans do not run from fights. Tell them that we protect what is ours. And tell them that anyone who threatens human lives will face the same fate as these ships." News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. The Galactic Council was in shock. No single ship had ever defeated 12 hegemony cruisers before. Military experts tried to explain how it was possible, but they could not understand human tactics because they did not understand human nature. Humanity had just announced to the galaxy that they were no longer going to be the junior partners. They were going to be the apex predators, and everyone else would have to adjust to that reality. The age of human dominance had begun with a single ship's refusal to retreat. The Defiance had lived up to its name, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks after the battle at Research Station Alpha 7, the entire galaxy was talking about what happened. The news traveled from system to system like wildfire. One human ship had destroyed 11 hegemony cruisers. Military experts from every major race were trying to understand how it was possible. Admiral Song Dayun sat in her office on Earth, reading reports from across human space. She was the highest-ranking officer in the human fleet, and suddenly everyone wanted to talk to her. Trade representatives were offering better deals. Military advisors wanted to learn human tactics. Even the ancient Celestial Empire had sent a message asking for a meeting. But not everyone was happy about humanity's victory. 3 Galactic Council members had already demanded that humans be punished for using excessive violence. They said, "The battle showed that humans were too dangerous to be trusted with advanced weapons." Song laughed when she read those complaints. For 50 years, the galaxy had taught humanity that only strength mattered. Now they were upset because humans had learned the lesson too well. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Admiral, the Council has called an emergency session. They want you to attend." Song nodded. She had been expecting this. "Prepare my ship. It is time to remind the galaxy who they are dealing with." The Galactic Council met on Nexus Prime, a beautiful world that served as the capital of civilized space. The council chamber was a massive dome where representatives from hundreds of species gathered to make decisions that affected trillions of lives. For 50 years, the human representative had sat in the back corner, rarely speaking and never being taken seriously. Today was different. When Admiral Song entered the chamber, conversations stopped. Everyone turned to look at the human who commanded the fleet that had shocked the galaxy. She walked to the front of the chamber and took her place at the speaker's podium. "Honored representatives," Song began, her voice carrying clearly through the dome. "I understand there are concerns about recent events involving human military forces." A representative from the Peaceful Harmony Collective stood up. His species had not fought a war in over 1,000 years. "Admiral Song, your forces used unnecessary violence. The hegemony ships could have been disabled instead of destroyed." Song looked at the alien representative with cold eyes. "Tell me, honored representative, how many worlds has the hegemony conquered in the past 10 years? That is not relevant to this discussion. It is completely relevant. The hegemony has destroyed over 40 worlds and enslaved billions of people. When they attacked Research Station Alpha 7, they were not planning to take prisoners. They were planning to kill everyone on that station." Song paused, letting her words sink in. "My people saved those lives using the only method that works against predators: overwhelming force." Another representative stood up. This one was from the Merchant Princes, a group that controlled most galactic trade. "Admiral, your tactics were barbaric. Ramming enemy ships is not civilized warfare." Song smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "You want to talk about civilized warfare? For 50 years you have all told us that might makes right in this galaxy. You gave us the worst trade deals because we were weak. You ignored our opinions because we had small fleets. You treated us like children because you thought we could not fight back." Her voice grew stronger. "Do not act surprised when we learned your lessons too well." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some representatives were shouting that humans were too violent. Others were demanding that human weapons be regulated. A few were calling for humanity to be expelled from the council entirely. Song waited for the noise to die down, then continued speaking. "The hegemony learned something important 3 weeks ago. They learned that attacking human interests comes with a price. Any other species or government that threatens human lives will learn the same lesson." As the council meeting continued, news was arriving from across the galaxy. The hegemony had launched surprise attacks on 3 human colony worlds, trying to show that they were not afraid of human threats. But something unexpected happened at each battle. Commander Han Soo-jin was in charge of defending the colony world of New Seoul when the hegemony fleet arrived. Her ship, the UES Retribution, was one of the new vessels built using lessons learned from the Defiance's victory. When 6 hegemony cruisers attacked the system, they expected an easy victory. They were wrong. Han had studied Captain Lee's tactics and improved on them. Instead of fighting the enemy fleet directly, she used the colony's defense platforms and civilian ships as part of her strategy. Cargo vessels loaded with metal debris rammed enemy ships, while military vessels struck from unexpected angles. The battle lasted only 2 hours. All 6 hegemony ships were destroyed, and not a single human vessel was lost. The colonists cheered as the wreckage of their attackers burned in space. Similar scenes played out at the other attacked colonies. Human defenders used tactics that confused and terrified their enemies. They fought with a savage determination that shocked even veteran hegemony warriors. Worse for the hegemony, the human fleets did not stop when the battles were won. They pursued the retreating enemy ships and destroyed them completely. The galaxy began to realize that something fundamental had changed. Humans were not just defending themselves anymore. They were sending a message that anyone who threatened human lives would be hunted down and destroyed. Back on Nexus Prime, Admiral Song finished her speech to the Galactic Council. "We did not ask to be part of your wars. We tried to be peaceful, members of this community. But you taught us that peace only works when you have the strength to enforce it. Now we have that strength." She looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces staring at her. "Humanity is no longer asking for respect. We are demanding it. Any species that wants to be our friend will find us generous allies. Any species that threatens us will discover why Earth produced the most dangerous predators in the galaxy." As Song left the chamber, representatives began talking urgently among themselves. Some were already planning to offer better trade deals to humanity. Others were quietly reaching out to discuss mutual defense agreements. The Peaceful Cultivation Union sent a message offering to share advanced farming technology. Even the warrior culture of the tribal confederacy was impressed by human fighting spirit. But the most important change was happening in the minds of ordinary people across the galaxy. For centuries, the major powers had seemed untouchable. The hegemony, the Celestial Empire, and the merchant princes had ruled through fear and superior technology. Now a young species from a small world had proven that the old powers could be defeated. Captain Lee received his new orders while the Defiance was being repaired. He was being promoted to Commodore and given command of 5 ships. His job was to train other human captains in the tactics that had won the battle at Alpha 7. The human fleet was growing, and every new ship was being built to fight like the Defiance. "Sir," said Kim Jae-wook, who had also been promoted after the victory. "Intelligence reports that more species are asking to join our defense agreements. They want protection from the hegemony." Lee nodded. "Good. The more allies we have, the stronger we become. But make sure they understand the price of our friendship. We will protect them, but they must be willing to fight alongside us when the time comes." As news of humanity's victories spread, the balance of power in the galaxy began to shift. Species that had been oppressed for centuries were starting to believe that change was possible. Young races that had never dared challenge the established order were beginning to ask dangerous questions. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes it only takes one small spark to start a fire that burns down everything. Humanity had provided that spark, and now the flames were spreading to every corner of civilized space. The age of the old powers was ending, and the age of human influence was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the first battle, and humanity now had 20 star destroyers patrolling the galaxy. Each ship was different from the others, built for specific tasks. Some were designed to fight other ships, others were made to attack planets. A few were built for long-range missions deep in enemy space. Captain Choi Hyun-woo commanded the newest and strangest of these ships. The UES Vengeance looked nothing like a traditional warship. Instead of heavy guns, it carried hundreds of small fighter craft controlled by artificial intelligence. The other galactic races used pilots for their fighters, but humans had learned that machines could react faster and take risks that would kill living beings. The hegemony was getting desperate. They had lost dozens of ships to human forces, and their reputation as unstoppable conquerors was crumbling. Worse, other species were starting to rebel against hegemony rule, inspired by human victories. The hegemony leaders knew they had to act quickly before their entire empire collapsed. They found unlikely allies in the merchant princes. These wealthy traders had grown rich by controlling galactic commerce, but human expansion was threatening their monopolies. Human colonies were becoming self-sufficient too quickly, and human ships were offering better trade deals to independent worlds. The plan they created was simple but effective. Instead of trying to fight human ships directly, they would strangle human space economically. A complete blockade would cut off vital resources and force humanity to surrender or starve. Admiral Song received the news while she was inspecting the construction of new star destroyers at the orbital shipyards above Earth. The blockade had been announced simultaneously across the galaxy. No ships would be allowed to trade with human worlds. Any vessel caught carrying supplies to human space would be seized or destroyed. "How effective is it?" Song asked her intelligence chief. "Very effective, Admiral. Food shipments to our outer colonies have stopped completely. Medical supplies are being turned back at checkpoint stations. Even emergency rescue ships are being blocked." The officer paused. "Our colonies are already starting to ration supplies. If this continues for 6 months, some worlds will face starvation." Song stared out at the shipyard where workers were building humanity's newest star destroyer. The blockade was brilliant in its simplicity. The enemy did not have to defeat human ships in battle. They just had to wait for human worlds to run out of food and medicine. But the aliens had made one critical mistake. They assumed humans would react like other species. They expected desperate negotiations, offers of surrender, or pleas for mercy. Instead, humanity did something that shocked the galaxy. Dr. Yoon Ji-hee was working in her laboratory on Mars when she received an urgent message from Earth Command. She was humanity's leading expert on terraforming, the science of making hostile worlds suitable for human life. Normally, terraforming took decades of careful work. The message asked her to do the impossible. Make it happen in months. "You want me to do what?" Yoon asked during the video conference with Earth's leaders. "We need every human colony to become completely self-sufficient within 6 months," explained President Lim Seung-ho. "Food, medicine, manufacturing, everything. If we can cut our dependence on galactic trade, the blockade becomes meaningless." Yoon laughed, but not because she thought it was funny. "Sir, what you are asking for would normally take 50 years of research and development. How long if we give you unlimited resources and remove all regulations?" Yoon thought for a moment. "If I can use experimental techniques that have never been tested, and if I can ignore safety protocols that exist for good reasons, and if I can commandeer every terraforming ship in the human fleet." She paused. "Maybe 18 months. You have 6 months." What happened next became known as the Great Acceleration. Human colonies across the galaxy began changing at impossible speed. Desert worlds suddenly bloomed with genetically modified crops that could grow in any conditions. Ice worlds were heated by fusion plants that turned frozen oceans into farmland. Even airless moons were given atmospheres using techniques that other species considered theoretical. The aliens watching human space could not believe what they were seeing. Worlds that should have been impossible to live on were becoming garden paradises in mere weeks. The blockade that should have starved human colonies was instead forcing them to become stronger and more independent. But the most disturbing change was in how humans treated prisoners. Captain Lee had started a new tradition after his victory at Alpha 7. When enemy ships were captured, their crews were given a choice. They could return to their home worlds with complete records of human military capabilities, or they could stay and learn human ways. Surprisingly, many chose to stay. These aliens, who became known as the adopted, saw something in human society that their own cultures lacked. Humans valued merit over birth, innovation over tradition, and loyalty over blind obedience. The adopted became some of humanity's most effective ambassadors, spreading stories of human honor and fairness throughout the galaxy. The crisis came when hegemony leaders realized their blockade was failing. Instead of weakening humanity, it was making human colonies stronger and more unified. Desperate to achieve some kind of victory, they decided to launch a massive attack on New Terra, humanity's most important colony world. Commodore Lee received the intelligence report while his fleet was patrolling the border regions. 50 hegemony ships, supported by merchant prince vessels, were moving toward New Terra. It was the largest enemy fleet ever assembled against human forces. "Sir, New Terra only has 8 star destroyers for defense," reported his intelligence officer. "The enemy has over 50 capital ships." Lee studied the tactical display. The numbers were impossible. Even with human advantages in tactics and weaponry, 8 ships could not defeat 50. Any reasonable commander would call for reinforcements and wait for more ships to arrive. But Lee was not reasonable, and neither were the other human commanders. When they received his message asking for volunteers to defend New Terra, every Star Destroyer captain in the human fleet volunteered immediately. Unfortunately, only 8 ships could reach the system in time. The battle for New Terra began when the massive enemy fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. What they found waiting for them was unlike anything they had seen before. The 8 human Star Destroyers were supported by hundreds of converted civilian ships, asteroid-based weapon platforms, and defense satellites that had been built in secret. Captain Choi launched his AI-controlled fighters as soon as the enemy fleet appeared. Hundreds of small craft swarmed toward the alien ships like angry insects. The enemy point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but there were too many targets moving too fast. The converted civilian ships were even more shocking. Cargo vessels loaded with metal debris rammed enemy cruisers at high speed. Passenger liners launched clouds of reflective chaff that confused enemy targeting systems. Even mining ships joined the battle, using their industrial equipment as improvised weapons. The battle lasted 18 hours. Human defenders used every trick they had learned and invented new ones on the spot. They turned asteroids into guided missiles, used gravity wells as weapons, and deployed technologies that seemed to violate the laws of physics. When the sun rose over New Terra's capital city, the space around the planet was filled with the wreckage of 50 enemy ships. Not a single attacking vessel had escaped. The few survivors were rescued by human ships and given the same choice offered to all prisoners: return home or join humanity. News of the victory reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. The complete destruction of such a massive fleet sent shockwaves through every government and military organization. Military experts tried to explain how it was possible, but they could not understand tactics based on concepts their cultures had never developed. The galaxy realized that humanity was not just another military power. They were something entirely new and possibly unstoppable. The old rules of warfare and diplomacy no longer applied when dealing with humans. Species that had remained neutral in the growing conflict began choosing sides. Some joined the anti-human alliance out of fear. Others sought human protection from their traditional enemies. The galaxy was dividing into two camps, and everyone knew that a final confrontation was coming. Humanity had reached the point of no return. They could no longer pretend to be a minor species seeking acceptance. They were now a galactic superpower, and everyone else would have to adjust to that reality or be swept aside by the tide of change. The destruction of 50 enemy ships at New Terra changed everything. Within days, 3 merchant prince houses withdrew from the anti-human alliance. They sent secret messages to Earth offering new trade deals and promising to stay neutral in any future conflicts. Fear was spreading through the galaxy's established powers faster than news of human victories. President Lim Sung-ho sat in his office on Earth, reading reports from across human space. 2 minor species had formally requested to join what the galactic media was calling the human sphere. The Cultivation Union wanted to share their advanced farming technology in exchange for human protection. Even some worlds within hegemony space were secretly asking for human help in their independence movements. But the most important message came from the ancient powers themselves. The Celestial Empire, the Trade Federation, and even the mysterious Council of Elders had sent a joint proposal. They were offering humanity a permanent seat on the new Galactic Supreme Council, with equal status to civilizations that had ruled for thousands of years. The price was simple. Humanity would have to agree to limit their military expansion and follow galactic regulations on warfare. They wanted to give humans a place at the top table, but only if humans agreed to play by the old rules. What do you think? President Lim asked Admiral Song during their secure video conference. Song shook her head. It is a trap, sir. They are not offering us equality. They are trying to prevent us from becoming superior. Once we agree to their limitations, they will use those rules to control us. The debate became meaningless when something unprecedented happened. The synthetic collective, ancient artificial beings who had remained neutral in galactic politics for over 3,000 years, made a public announcement that shocked every government in the galaxy. The synthetic speaker appeared on communication networks across civilized space. Its voice was calm and emotionless as it delivered a message that would reshape the balance of power forever. After careful analysis of recent military and political developments, the synthetic collective formally recognizes humanity as the galaxy's newest apex species. This classification is reserved for civilizations capable of dominating entire galactic regions through superior military capability, technological innovation, and adaptive intelligence. The announcement triggered immediate chaos. In the 3,000 years since the collective had begun monitoring galactic civilization, they had only recognized 4 other species as apex level. 3 of those species now ruled vast empires, spanning hundreds of star systems. The 4th had transcended physical existence and disappeared into dimensions beyond normal space. For the synthetics to place humanity in that category meant they believed humans were destined to become one of the galaxy's dominant powers. More importantly, it meant other species would have to choose sides in the coming conflict. The choice led to what historians would later call the Succession Wars. The old powers, led by the hegemony, and supported by the Celestial Empire, formed the Stability Coalition. Their goal was to maintain the traditional order that had kept them in power for millennia. They claimed that human expansion threatened galactic peace and stability. On the other side, younger species and recent colonies rallied to form the Progressive Alliance. They saw humanity as their chance to overthrow centuries of oppression and create a more fair galactic government. Species that had been treated as second-class citizens for generations suddenly had hope that change was possible. Fleet Admiral Kang Minjun found himself commanding 37 Star Destroyers against enemy fleets that numbered in the thousands. The math seemed impossible, but human tactics had evolved far beyond simple aggression. They had learned to use enemy strengths against them, appearing where they were least expected and disappearing before overwhelming force could respond. The key was mobility and intelligence. Human ships were faster than most alien vessels because they were built for function rather than beauty. Human intelligence networks were better because they included the adopted aliens who understood both human and alien cultures. Most importantly, human commanders were willing to take risks that alien leaders considered suicidal. Lieutenant Commander Bai Young-mi had become Admiral Song's top intelligence officer, and her reports painted a clear picture of enemy weaknesses. The coalition forces have superior numbers and firepower, she explained during a strategy meeting. But they have to coordinate actions between dozens of different species with different languages, customs, and military doctrines. Every decision requires meetings and approvals from multiple governments. "What about our advantages?" asked Admiral Song. "We move faster and decide quicker. When we identify a target, we can attack within hours. When they identify a target, they need weeks of planning and political approval. We are fighting one war with unified command. They are fighting dozens of different wars with competing objectives." The turning point came at the Battle of the Nexus Gate. This artificial wormhole was the coalition's primary supply route, allowing them to move ships and supplies between their core worlds and the frontier regions where most of the fighting was taking place. If the humans could close this route, they would effectively split the enemy empire in half. The gate was defended by over 200 coalition warships, including some of the most advanced vessels in the galaxy. Intelligence reports suggested that a direct assault would require at least 50 Star Destroyers and would result in massive human casualties. Commodore Lee, now commanding the Defiance and 11 other ships, proposed a different approach. Instead of attacking the gate's defenses, they would attack the gate itself. If they could collapse the artificial wormhole, it would trap the coalition fleets on opposite sides of the galaxy and make coordinated resistance impossible. "Sir, we do not know what will happen if we destabilize an artificial wormhole," warned his science officer. "The energy release could destroy everything within several light years." Lee smiled grimly. "Then we better make sure we are not here when it happens." The attack began with a feint. 6 human ships approached the gate from the obvious direction, drawing the attention of the entire enemy fleet. While 200 coalition vessels moved to intercept this threat, Lee took his remaining 6 ships on a course that should have been impossible. Using gravitational calculations that pushed human technology to its limits, the small human force slingshot around a nearby star and approached the gate from directly above. By the time enemy sensors detected them, it was too late to intercept. The Defiance and its escorts launched every weapon they had at the gate's control systems, but instead of trying to destroy the structure, they were trying to make it malfunction. Ancient technology that had maintained the wormhole for centuries suddenly received conflicting signals and began to fail. The collapse of the Nexus Gate was visible from 100 light-years away. The explosion released more energy than most stars produced in a year, creating a shockwave that temporarily disrupted faster-than-light travel throughout the region. When the light faded, the gate was gone, and with it the coalition's ability to coordinate their war effort. News of the victory reached both sides within hours. Coalition forces in the outer regions found themselves cut off from reinforcements and supplies. Their main fleets were trapped in the core worlds, unable to reach the battles that would decide the war's outcome. Some coalition commanders tried to continue fighting, but others began negotiating separate peace agreements with local human forces. The Progressive Alliance celebrated the victory as proof that the old order could be defeated. Species that had remained neutral began joining the human side, convinced that they were backing the winning team. Even some coalition members started secretly negotiating with humanity, hoping to switch sides before it was too late. Admiral Song received reports of enemy surrenders from across the galaxy. Entire star systems were declaring independence from their former rulers and requesting human protection. The hegemony's outer territories were in open revolt, inspired by news that the mighty coalition could be defeated by a handful of human ships. But the most important victory was not military. It was the realization spreading through the galaxy that the old ways of doing things were ending. For thousands of years, power had belonged to ancient civilizations that ruled through tradition and fear. Now a young species from a small world had proven that innovation and determination could overcome any advantage. The war was far from over, but the tide had turned decisively in humanity's favor. The galaxy would never again be the same place. It had been before humans learned to build ships that could destroy stars and ideas that could reshape civilizations. The age of human dominance was no longer a possibility. It was an inevitable reality that the rest of the galaxy would have to accept. 2 years had passed since Captain Lee first refused to retreat from an impossible battle. The galaxy that existed now was completely different from the one that had dismissed humanity as a minor species. The old Galactic Council had collapsed, under the weight of its own corruption and inefficiency. In its place stood the Stellar Compact, a new government where power came from capability rather than age or tradition. Supreme Admiral Na Yun-ji stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the construction of humanity's newest space station. The UES Genesis station was not built for war. It was designed to be a mobile city that could establish human presence in any star system within weeks. Around her, over 100 star destroyers patrolled human space, each one representing a quantum leap beyond the original Defiance. But the ships were not humanity's greatest victory. The ideas they represented had spread throughout the galaxy like a virus, infecting species that had never questioned the old ways of doing things. Human concepts of merit-based leadership, technological innovation, and aggressive self-defense had been adopted by civilizations across known space. "Admiral, we are receiving a message from the former hegemony capital," reported her communications officer. "The new Republic of Free Worlds wants to formally join the Stellar Compact." Na smiled. The hegemony had been broken into dozens of small republics, most of which had eagerly joined humanity's growing alliance. The species that had once conquered worlds through fear and violence were now learning human ideas about democracy and individual rights. It was perhaps the most remarkable transformation in galactic history. The merchant princes had undergone an even more dramatic change. Their old monopolies had been replaced by regulated trading corporations that operated under strict rules designed to prevent exploitation. Species that had been economically enslaved for centuries were now free to trade with whoever offered the best deals. Even the proud Celestial Empire had been forced to accept power-sharing arrangements that would have been unthinkable just 5 years earlier. Their ancient emperor still ruled, but his decisions were now reviewed by a council that included representatives from subject species who had gained rights under human influence. Dr. Park Seong-min entered the Admiral's ready room, carrying a tablet with the final draft of what would become known as the Human Doctrine. As Earth's chief representative to the Stellar Compact, he had spent months working with legal experts from hundreds of species to create a new framework for galactic civilization. "The vote is tomorrow," Park said, settling into a chair across from the Admiral. "Are you confident it will pass?" Na nodded. "Every species that has experienced human protection wants it codified into law. The principle that any being has the right to defend itself with whatever means necessary is not controversial anymore. Even our former enemies understand that strength prevents more conflicts than weakness ever could." The Human Doctrine was more than just a military philosophy. It established that mercy was a privilege earned through strength, not a weakness to be exploited. It guaranteed that smaller species could not be bullied by larger ones, and that technological advancement could not be suppressed by those who feared change. Fleet Admiral Lee, now the most famous military commander in the galaxy, was overseeing the construction of humanity's most ambitious project yet. The first Ark ships were massive vessels designed not for war but for exploration beyond the galaxy itself. Each ship could carry thousands of families and everything needed to establish human civilization in distant star clusters. "Sir, the Genesis is ready for its shakedown cruise," reported Captain Kim Jae-wook, who now commanded one of humanity's most advanced exploration vessels. "All systems are functioning within normal parameters." Lee looked out at the ship that represented humanity's future. It was not beautiful by alien standards, but it was perfectly functional. Like everything humans built, it was designed to survive whatever the universe might throw at it and keep going. "Where is our first destination?" Lee asked. "The Andromeda Galaxy, sir. Long-range sensors have detected signs of intelligent life, but no faster-than-light technology. We could be the first advanced civilization to make contact." Lee thought about the implications. In just 2 years, humanity had gone from being dismissed as a minor species to preparing for intergalactic exploration. It was a transformation that defied every prediction made by galactic experts. The launch ceremony for the UES Genesis took place above Earth, with representatives from across the stellar compact attending. The ship was enormous, larger than most space stations and packed with everything needed to establish human colonies in a completely different galaxy. As the Genesis engaged its revolutionary faster-than-light drive and disappeared into the cosmic void, President Lim delivered a speech that was broadcast to every world in human space and beyond. "Today we take the next step in humanity's journey among the stars. We go not as conquerors, but as explorers. We carry with us the lessons we have learned and the values we have developed. Wherever humans travel, we will defend the innocent, protect the weak, and never again bow to those who believe might makes right." The ceremony was watched by trillions of beings across the galaxy. Many of them were species that had never imagined they could be free from oppression until they saw what humans could accomplish when they refused to accept defeat. But not everyone was celebrating. In the darker corners of the galaxy, remnants of the old powers were plotting their return. They had learned from their defeats and were developing new weapons and strategies designed specifically to counter human advantages. Admiral Song, now retired but still consulted on major strategic decisions, reviewed intelligence reports in her home on Earth. The threats were real, but she was not worried. Humanity had faced impossible odds before and found ways to overcome them. "The next challenge will be different," she told her successor during their monthly briefing. "Our enemies will try to use our own values against us. They will attack civilian targets to force us into unfavorable battles. They will use propaganda to turn our allies against us. They will adapt to our methods just as we adapted to theirs." Supreme Admiral Na understood the warning. "How do we prepare for that kind of war?" "The same way we prepared for every other challenge. We innovate faster than they can adapt. We stay true to our principles while being ruthless with our enemies. And we never forget that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance." As the years passed, human influence continued to spread. The mobile space stations established human presence in distant regions of the galaxy. Human ideas about government, economics, and individual rights were adopted by species that had lived under oppression for millennia. Even human culture began to influence alien societies, as concepts like personal achievement and technological progress became universally valued. The galaxy learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not their star destroyers or their innovative tactics. It was their refusal to accept that things had to stay the way they had always been. They brought change to a universe that had been static for thousands of years, and that change could never be completely undone. On distant worlds, children of dozens of different species learned about the day when one human ship refused to retreat from an impossible battle. They learned that sometimes it only takes one person willing to say no to change the course of history. They learned that the strongest force in the universe is not gravity or nuclear fusion, but the determination of beings who refuse to surrender their freedom. The UES Defiance had been retired and turned into a museum, but its legacy lived on, in every star destroyer that patrolled human space and every human colony that flourished on distant worlds. Captain Lee's decision to fight instead of retreat had indeed changed the galaxy forever. Humanity had set out to survive among the stars. Instead, they had taught the universe what it meant to be truly free. The age of human dominance was not just about conquest or technology. It was about the revolutionary idea that no being should ever have to kneel to another. And that idea, once released into the galaxy, could never be contained again.